What are the best and worst foods for building muscle? In this video, I'll be ranking 20 popular muscle building and health foods. With so much conflicting nutrition information on social media that no one knows what to believe, I want to simplify nutrition for you once and for all by revealing the exact foods I eat to maintain a lean and muscular physique year-round and which foods to avoid at all costs. I'll use the same tier system as previous exercise videos, with G for a goated food that gets you jacked and P for a pencil neck food that's overrated and keeps you small, or just makes you fat. I'll also crown one food as the goat of goats and demote one food to nutrition purgatory for eternal pencil neck. Now, before we start, for a food to be G tier, it must meet these three criteria in this order. Must be calorically dense and nutrient dense, must be minimally processed and easily digestible for most people, it's got to taste good and be easy to eat. If it checks these three boxes, you know it's a goat muscle building food. Now, if it's not calorically or nutrient dense, if it's highly processed, or it doesn't taste great, it's going into the pencil neck tier. Let's start with three overrated muscle building foods: peanut butter, protein bars, and liver. Peanut butter is arguably the most overrated muscle building food ever. It's a calorie bomb with a subpar nutrient content, and I guarantee it's destroyed more physiques than any other food. It's often loaded with vegetable oils and sugar, and who realistically just eats one spoonful of peanut butter? No one. And no one eats peanut butter because it's good for them. People eat peanut butter because it tastes good. So if you're serious about getting lean and jacked, stay the away from peanut butter and nuts in general, unless you just want to get fat. P tier right away. How about protein bars? I'm not a fan. These are also going in the P tier. They're highly processed, they're loaded with sugar and artificial sweeteners and other chemicals, and they often have like a 2-year shelf life. And again, people don't eat protein bars because they're healthy. You eat protein bars because you're lazy and you don't meal prep. Protein bars. Now, this one might come as a surprise to you, but what about liver? It's supposedly the most nutrient dense and anabolic food ever, right? Well, we all know what happened to Liver King. It turns out it wasn't all the raw liver he was eating, but instead all the steroids he was taking that made him super jacked. Who would have thought? And that's sarcasm, by the way. I'm putting liver in the D tier, and now it is true that liver is an incredibly nutritious and healthy food, and I seriously tried to make myself like it, but it just tastes terrible. I tried every which way to prepare it just to mask the taste, but I couldn't force myself to eat it on a consistent basis. And this is the guy who drinks meat shakes saying this. So instead of liver, I just take desiccated liver tablets, and that works for me. Now, what has a similar nutrient profile to liver but actually tastes good? Red meat. I consume steak or some form of red meat every day, and it's a goat food. Beef is legitimately one of the best and most anabolic foods you can give your body. It's loaded with iron, B vitamins, zinc, magnesium, creatine, selenium, and I can keep going. And despite all the media propaganda bullshit you may have heard, red meat does not cause cancer, it's not bad for your kidneys, and the cholesterol from red meat is not bad for you either. And if you don't have access to red meat or it's just too expensive, go with hamburger meat. Lamb is great too. Other reasons why I'm a huge fan of red meat is because it improves satiety, reduces cravings, and helps build and preserve muscle. Of course, we have to talk about chicken. And while I'm not a big fan of chicken, I know it's a staple in pretty much every diet. It's easy to make, it goes with anything, it's high in protein, low in fat, and cheap. And now while chicken's not even in my top 3 protein sources, and just because I don't eat a lot of it, doesn't mean you shouldn't. While I'm tempted to put it in the B tier, I have to put it in the A tier for muscle building foods because it is the ultimate utility protein. And while I don't eat much chicken, I eat a ton of eggs. Eggs are a superfood and should be a staple in anyone's diet if they're serious about building muscle. And make sure to eat the whole egg, including the yolk, because that's where all the nutrients are, such as biotin, choline, vitamin D, selenium, iodine, just to name a few. I legitimately eat 6 to 10 whole eggs every day and have eaten up to 3 dozen eggs when I was filming another YouTube video. Every morning I eat eggs for breakfast, and I definitely consider them the ultimate breakfast food. And I'll also throw in a couple of eggs for dinner as well, just to make that meal extra nutritious. And a couple quick tips. Hard-boiled eggs are one of my go-to options for a quick nutritious snack or breakfast on the go. And never eat raw eggs. I did that once and I got super sick with salmonella, and I literally shit the bed when I was taking a nap. So please cook your eggs. And I'm gonna stay on animal foods, but what about pork? I wanna put pork in the A tier because it's a completely fine food with a solid amino acid profile, but I can't only because it's so high in fat, and I do think there's better foods for building muscle. You never really hear bodybuilders talking about pork as being one of the staple foods in their diet, and there must be a reason for that. Now, I do regularly consume bacon because I enjoy it, but I've also gone long periods of time with zero pork in my diet, and I didn't notice the difference. It's going B tier. Another super popular muscle building food is fish. When I think of fish, I immediately think of salmon, cod, and tuna. But like liver, I don't eat a lot of fish, mainly because I don't enjoy it or any other seafood for that matter. But with that being said, fish still tastes better than liver. And if you like it and you have access to high quality seafood, definitely eat it because it's generally a quite nutritious food that's high in protein. And while I want to put fish in the B tier because I hardly eat it, I have to put it in the A tier tier simply because it's nutritious, and if it's prepared well, I will eat it. Shrimp is good too, but if you're also like me and you don't eat much fish, I highly recommend you still consume some kind of fish oil or omega-3s for heart and brain health. Now, what about dairy? Like red meat, dairy is an incredible muscle building food, but it's also one of the most unjustly demonized. High quality dairy is packed with protein and essential nutrients like vitamin D and calcium. And my top 2 dairy foods would easily be Greek yogurt and cottage cheese. They're going G tier immediately. But I also regularly consume cheese, milk, and butter, and I would put those in the A tier. Now, I know milk gets a lot of hate, but if you tolerate milk, fine, then drink it. And think about it like this: milk has always been the first food to bulk up. It's high in protein, rich in nutrients, and easy to consume in large quantities. In fact, after my hardest training sessions, I love to have 1 to 2 bottles of chocolate milk. And I've been doing this for 20 plus years since I was playing high school football, and chocolate milk works just as good now as it did then. Also, if you're still on the fence about dairy or you're lactose intolerant, you can always go with lactose-free dairy products. In other words, if you purposely avoid dairy, you're missing out on one of the best muscle building foods there is. All right, so we've covered the best proteins. Now let's talk carbohydrates. Starting off with probably everyone's favorite carb, bread. I have to put bread in the C tier. It's not overrated, but it's not underrated either. I actually consume a decent amount of bread, but only high quality sourdough bread because it's lower in gluten. It's almost impossible to avoid gluten entirely, but I try to whenever I can because there's an overwhelming amount of evidence showing that wheat and gluten, especially how it's grown today, is not good for people. In fact, people with severe gluten intolerances get extremely sick if they have any gluten at all. That being said, humans have eaten bread for thousands of years, so I can't completely demonize it either. Bread, like dairy, is really individual specific and dose dependent, but if you're going to eat bread, try to eat the highest quality bread you can, like a loaf of sourdough from a bakery, and definitely not the cheap white bread from the grocery store. All right, now what about rice? White rice specifically is A tier. White rice is a staple food for athletes and bodybuilders alike because it's cheap, easily digestible, and can be eaten at any time. I often eat white rice for lunch or dinner and sometimes for breakfast, but usually as cream of rice. I tend to avoid brown rice and wild rice because it's high in phytic acid and harder to digest. But my favorite pre-workout meal is a bowl of white rice with cinnamon, honey, and crushed dates, and definitely gives me some quick, easily digestible carbs to fill up my glycogen stores before a hard workout. White rice is definitely my number 1 carbohydrate for bulking. Now, pasta. It depends on what kind of pasta. A lot of people love pasta, but personally, I never eat it. It's oftentimes loaded with wheat and gluten and wreaks havoc on my digestion, so I tend to avoid it completely. But if you get a gluten-free pasta or rice-based pasta, I think pasta can be a great muscle building food because it's easy to eat. I'll put it in the B tier as long as it digests well. Another great carb source is potatoes, sweet potatoes or white potatoes. Potatoes are loaded with nutrients and they're great for bulking or leaning out. And if you didn't know, potatoes are the number 1 food on the satiety index, meaning no other food keeps you feeling full better than potatoes. I eat potatoes at least 2 or 3 times a week and they are undoubtedly my favorite plant food. I'm putting potatoes in G tier. I also eat a ton of fruits. Fruits are nature's dessert and pretty much impossible to overeat on fruit. It's like your body knows when it's had enough fruit, and pretty much any fruits are great, but I mainly stick to strawberries, blueberries, mango, and pineapple. And here's just a quick fact about pineapple. It's loaded with an enzyme, bromelain, and that's a great natural digestive. So I'd put fruit as B tier. They're a great food, and I recommend everyone include them in your diet. Just don't think eating more apples and oranges will get you as jacked as meat or eggs, but still include them. Now, what about vegetables? Honestly, I think vegetables are super overrated, especially for building muscle. Why? Because I honestly don't feel any different whether I include them in my diet or not. And now I do eat them occasionally if I'm out to eat or if my girlfriend makes them for dinner, but I just don't go out of my way to eat them. Now I will say there's absolutely nothing wrong with vegetables, and I think vegetables are great when you're on a diet because they're super low in calories, high in fiber, and they take up room in your stomach, making you feel full. So essentially, vegetables are filler food. They're great for fat people or those trying to lose weight. But if you're already jacked and you want to be more jacked, let's not pretend eating more vegetables is the answer. Eating more meat, eggs, dairy, and quality carbs is the answer. There's probably a reason why you don't see many jacked vegans. And excluding entire food groups from your diet is never a good idea. So for muscle building purposes only, I'm putting vegetables in the P tier. Moving on to fats. One of the most popular healthy fat foods is avocados. I'm putting avocados in D tier. Before you freak out, here's why. They're overpriced and full of unsaturated fats, which apparently help lower cholesterol levels. But if you didn't know, cholesterol is good for you, not bad for you. In fact, cholesterol is a type of steroid that the body produces naturally for many vital functions. Cholesterol is the precursor to sex hormones and other hormones necessary for glucose metabolism. In short, without adequate cholesterol, your body can't produce testosterone, which is exactly why I prefer to get the majority of the fat in my diet from cholesterol-rich foods. There's nothing wrong with avocados, but there's also nothing special about them, and I rarely include them in my diet. Avocados, honestly, they're just a trendy health food for fat yoga chicks. Now, to ensure I'm getting some kind of mono unsaturated fats in my diet, I use olive oil, and it's going in the C tier. It's more affordable than avocados, and it's easier to consume in my opinion. I'll take around 1 teaspoon of olive oil a day, and I try to get the highest quality olive oil I can, because oftentimes the cheaper brands in the grocery store are rancid. Alright, so we've got just 3 foods left, and I'll cover the worst first and the best last. 2 highly overrated muscle building foods are breakfast cereals and powdered green supplements. Granola, oatmeal, or cornflakes have never gotten anyone jacked. They're oftentimes loaded with sugar, hard to digest, and lack quality nutrients. I never eat breakfast cereals, and these are going into the P tier. Regarding powdered greens, they're one of the biggest scams in the supplement industry. Vegetables in general are overrated for getting jacked, so do you really think some freeze-dried spinach or seaweed powder is any better? Please don't be naive or stupid. Powdered greens are just another overpriced supplement marketed as a health food, P tier. And if you want to get your greens from your diet because you think they're important, just eat more veggies. Now, last but not least, whey protein powder. While I know whey protein is a highly processed and not a real food per se, you must remember whey protein is derived from dairy, which is a real food that humans have consumed for thousands of years. I consume whey regularly because it has a great amino acid profile, it's super convenient, and an easy way to ensure you're hitting your protein target for the day. Personally, I avoid whey protein concentrate and hydrolysate, and I always opt for a high quality isolate. I'm tempted to put whey protein in the G tier, but I'm keeping it in the A tier simply because it's always better to eat real food. So out of all the go-to foods, if I had to choose just one, it would have to be red meat. While it was a close call between steak and whole eggs, I think most of us will agree that red meat is the ultimate anabolic food and should be a staple in your diet if you're serious about getting jacked. So that's why it's my goat of goats. And honestly, I can't choose just one food to relegate into nutrition purgatory for eternal pencil neck. Peanut butter and powdered greens are both extremely overrated and won't help you build a significant amount of muscle. Remember, no one eats peanut butter because it's healthy or essential in your diet. You eat peanut butter for pleasure, and you're better served just eating more steak and eggs to get more high quality fat and protein in your diet. And as I said, powdered greens are a scam and don't help you build muscle, so please avoid these. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to get bigger and stronger yourself, check out my completely free anabolic meal plan, which outlines exactly how I eat to get as jacked as possible. I'll put that link here next to my head, and if you want a training program to pair it with, you can also check out my straight up strength program that's also free to try. Links in the description. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you want to know why eating up to 15 eggs a day will get you more jacked than you ever thought possible, please check out this video here.